I'm Erica Hollingsworth, and you're listening to the F1 podcast.
What's up, everyone? It is Richie here from the F1 podcast. Today is February 26, 2024. I'm here with my co-host, Andrew Cleary. And Andrew, it is race week. We are back. How excited are you?
We're back, baby. Let's go. Yes, I'm excited. Let's go. This is going to be I think, a fantastic year for racing. There's a lot of interesting stories that are going to be coming up on this season. We're getting closer and closer to 2026 where the new regs come into play. So I'm excited to see what the season entails because the best part is everybody starts at zero again. We have a fresh slate. Max might be 600 points by the end of it, but I digress. Everyone has to start at zero.
You lose.
We've had no changes to the driver lineup this year, so we can only imagine that the competitiveness is going to get better. With that said,
I think not a lot of people know is there is Bahrain testing that usually happens a week before, where each team kind of goes through their own dynamics of how they test the new car of the season. But before we kind of get into Bahrain testing, just a quick couple of announcements. One, we have a fantasy team, and we've just been sending the link, and it should be on our social media pages. We got, I think, already 10 people signed up for it. So we'll make sure it is in the comment section below on all of our social media pages. Lastly, we are going to be at Trinity Common, as mentioned a couple of times on our Instagram page. You can find us there in Kensington Market. We'll be on site probably around 9-ish. We're going to have a nice cup of coffee in our hand, and I think we're going to have about 20 people in our section. I think tables should still be available last time I've checked with the bar, but call them, make a reservation, and we hope we can see you Saturday. Andrew, I don't know if I told you this, but we got a couple of little prizes, small little prizes that we can give out to our fans. Some stickers, maybe we got one of those necklaces that we got earlier in the season. So,
more reason than to come. Honestly, Trinity Common is such a vibe when it comes to watching an F1 race. And I remember last year when we watched the season opener in Bahrain, it was great for me, terrible for you and Erica. But overall, the vibes were immaculate. And we have a little exciting idea that John and I are going to do at Trinity Common upon the completion of the race. Maybe a little live.
Did I agree to this?
Yeah, you did. You did now. Maybe a live stream, not live stream, but a little live podcast episode going on there. And yeah, come out, stay tuned. You'll find out.
We hope we can see you this Saturday. Reminder that the race is this Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And if you can't make it, you can obviously tune into, I think it's TSN will be running it. I think without further ado, let's get into Bahrain testing. So we saw a lot of the teams go this weekend just to test out. And the cool thing is while they do testing at Bahrain, the following week, the season kicks off at Bahrain. So all the teams are there. They've been practicing. We've seen over a number of the teams have done over 250 plus laps. I think Haas locked into 441, Ferrari 416, Red Bull 390, and the list goes on and on. How did you find preseason testing other than Red Bull just looking pretty good?
You want to see me do it again?
I found a lot of teams copied the RB19's design that was so dominant last year. You could clearly tell, right, with the very thin openings in the side pod ducts, right, when the rear suspension, kind of like the airflow, you could definitely tell that a lot of teams were copying the RB19 concept, Alpine included. But we saw some great innovations in that regards, where RB20 is a masterpiece. I mean, oh my God, Adrian Newey maybe have designed probably the greatest car to ever step foot on a circuit. I say foot by wheels, but you know what I mean. He, instead of resting on his laurels, they said, let's innovate. Let's go over the top this year and take a concept that Mercedes had in their pocket. They thought of the idea and was able to now make it work, which I think is hilarious because apparently the paddock is saying that this car is more instinctively for Max. Like, he can drive it better on his instincts now than he did last year. And that's just a very scary thought.
Do a barrel roll.
And just to add into there, Andrew, and I don't know if you can, who is Max Verstappen's engineer? For those that don't know.
Oh yeah, GP, Giampiero Lambassi.
So if he was a poker player, he would have a terrible poker face because that man had the biggest smile on his face all weekend. during testing, and they found I think there was a video of him, and he was just giggling just how excited he is. And even Max even admitted in the interviews throughout this weekend of just like how excited and how positive he is for the car. And mind you, like I think there's also not only that, we saw really impressive racing from in some times from Ferrari, and I believe Mercedes looked pretty promising, McLaren at times. But I think overall, I think it was just good to get cars back on the track and see what they can make of.
I think in consideration, a real big winner this preseason testing was Ferrari. They have a really good car that's going to go really well on the racing stints. They already had the qualifying pace from last year as they did by securing a few poles. I think Red Bull's going to have that one lap pace. That's really going to put them on the forefront every race this season. But I can't see how Ferrari won't be able to challenge them. And I really do think they're going to be the one that fights for P2 in the constructors this year. Two motivated drivers, really, in Leclerc, going to be proving to why he should be the #1 driver with Lewis coming in the season next year. And then as well as Sainz proving his worth as to why he should be on the grid next season in another outfit. So I think you're going to have two motivated drivers. Fred has really turned the team around from the beginning of last season. I think they really bought into his concept there at Ferrari. And the engineers have made a car that I think is going to be very competitive. Don't know how it's going to, again, compare to Red Bull, because testing, you don't really know based on engine settings, fuel loads. But from what I've overall seen, I would say Ferrari was a big winner this past weekend at testing.
Leclerc came out and said that, quote, the car is reacting the way that we wanted it to. And mind you, the amount of times that we've kind of heard or seen in preseason testing, especially with Ferrari, where it's not been like sunshine and rainbows. So, and that we're better than the base we started from last year. Just kind of the tone Leclerc has come out. And, I was also a little skeptical about Carlos Sainz, because I was like, how is Carlos Sainz going to react? Because knowing his last year with a Tifosi and with Ferrari, but he seems that he's motivated. He needs to prove himself this year. And I think he had some pretty good laps. And I'll turn it over to you, Andrew. How did you find Aston Martin? Early Tell qualifying simulation pace they were almost a second behind, plus 8.4, but curious to see how you kind of reacted to today's. I think the good thing is Lance Stroll's not injured going into the weekend. So
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a chirp or anything, but it's good that you have both healthy drivers going into the weekend, or race weekend this weekend.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think they had a pretty decent testing in terms of that they were reasonably happy with their efforts. They got through they got through the testing program that they wanted to get done. I think they ended up 4th in both race simulation and qualifying spec calculations based on overall how testing would go. But the problem is, and if anybody's watched DTS in the first episode, you see what the ambitions of Lawrence Stroll is, especially
Yes.
with the car that has now been manufactured at our new facility, right? The facility that's been hyped up to be the one that's going to take us to the promised land, quote unquote, win a championship in that sense. And I don't think it's there yet with that ambition. I think this is kind of, I think last year was 2 steps forward. This year might be a step backwards. But sometimes you do have to go backwards in order to go forwards as well. I think it's going to be a net positive result. If they have an aggressive development plan in the pipeline for the car, I think they can become really competitive throughout the season. But right now, I think they're going to be the midfield overall.
Where Aston Martin was going to go after the season they had, because they had such a great year to start, and then things got a little quiet or sour towards the end. And I mean, I think the positiveness is like there is still backing with Lawrence Stroll, and clearly there's excitement in the team. Let's be real. Is there anyone that kind of really disappointed you this weekend? I think this is kind of going to our preseason predictions, but it's tough to be, I think, a Haas in the Haas camp right now, or even Alpine didn't really look as strong as we really anticipated.
Haas, I know they clocked the most laps this week. The majority of their testing wasn't even based on performance. It was based on how the tires would react to their new setup. And that's not good. Testing is geared for performance. Yes, it's also geared for what's the tire degradation going to be like. But when you're spending 90% of your time on how are the tires going to react overall versus how you can enhance the performance of the car, I don't think it's going to be very good. I don't even know if this team's going to get out of Q1 for majority of weekends. You know, Komatsu said that they are going to be like the slowest car in the grid come Bahrain, and traditionally they have not done a great job in terms of their upgrade packages beyond a certain point, like beyond like kind of the halfway mark in the season. So I predict they're going to win one award this year, and it's going to be the back marker of the year award.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I hate to do this, Andrew. I totally forgot about what happened on day 3 of testing. Another drainage gate.
Yeah.
Another drain. That
And
is still not
Ferrari
being
had to
repaired.
drive over it too again.
Like, come on.
Do a barrel roll.
I know, and it's funny though now because again, an overall concept that or overall kind of theme that I did see in testing this weekend is that teams have really kind of figured out the downforce of these new types of cars, which have now allowed drivers to have a smoother ride over curbs and kind of take toward the outside and really be able to maximize optimize the driving line. And with that, though, comes these incidents where I think you're going to be running over more drain covers at the outside of the track, right? You can see like a lot of teams were taking onto that sort of concrete to optimize the driving lines this weekend. So you almost wonder. I fear for the safety of race cars. I fear for the safety of the drainage cover holes because if that was a common theme this week in terms of optimizing the race line, it's going to be this could happen more often.
Yeah.
I think McLaren are going to be in a good position. They're in a much better position than they were 12 months ago, right? 12 months ago they were going to be dead last. They were dead last in terms of performance, right? You could clearly tell. You know, they had a lot to go on their plate, but then they made the biggest turnaround ever in the sport in terms of performance within a season. I think they have a good solid foundation going into the year, but I think Ferrari have made a better stride forward. And I can see McLaren kind of finishing P3 of that, you know, that race between Ferrari and McLaren. Mercedes, I can't tell. I feel like they sandbagged a lot this weekend because I think it was this is James Allison, their technical director. He was so excited for how the car was performing after the test. They got through everything that they wanted to in the testing, and like he had a smile from ear to ear with regards to his interview after day 3. So I'm not too sure what Mercedes is going to be like. They could have been sandbagging, and which if they did is going to make quite a battle for P2 in the championship.
Didn't seem like they had the greatest of weekend in terms of testing. It seemed that the drivers indicated that they are going to be behind to start the season.
But I don't think it's going to be as bad as last year. I think they still have a competitive car. I don't think it's going to be, I think they're going to be like, maybe they'll be like P4, go P3, P4 going into this weekend in terms of constructors. Like they'll get into Q3, but they'll be like late. Like probably like they'll probably start like P10, P9 on the grid. But if Zach Brown, if that team can turn around a car like they did last year and they can bring like some significant performance upgrades, I think they're going to be fighting for P2, maybe even P1 in some races this year.
Should we go into our predictions then?
For sure. Let's go into the predictions.
Everybody loves to hear what our take is. Come forward. I think that right. So I guess the question, how we want to do before we kind of go into this, just want to like talk about something. So on the 2024 season, the Chinese Grand Prix is scheduled to return to the calendar year for the first time since 2019, after being canceled for 4 years in a row. The Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix, which was canceled in 2023 due to flooding in the area, is scheduled to return to the calendar. The Russian Grand Prix was under contract to feature the 2024 calendar. However, the contract was terminated in 2022 in response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So I just wanted to lay that out for those that don't or probably had questions of what the calendar looked like this year. I think it's safe to say, do we say Max Verstappen will win again this year? And by how big of the margin?
That guy is going to absolutely obliterate the field this year. I mean, he might go 24 for 24, probably 23 for 24, considering he can't really do much in Singapore. So that's just kind of his Achilles heel when it comes to the F1 calendar. But I'll say my prediction afterwards, but he is the front runner, clear cut to win the World Drivers' Championship.
So I have him as winning the championship. I have Red Bull winning constructors. And by the points, this is lower than his last year, but still kind of reasonable. I have him winning more than 535 points. And I think last year he won 545.
575.
575. Yeah, see, like still good. So I guess the question is like, who do we think it could be the top four? And going into this weekend, I decided, okay, who do you think is realistic? Lando Norris looked really good towards the end of the season. Lewis Hamilton has proved some really good recovery and for Mercedes. I still think Charles Leclerc has it in him to go P2 this year, and especially how that car looked this weekend. I think it is possible. Maybe I'm just being a little too pro Ferrari right now, but I'm just confident to see how he can do it. And honestly, like I think he's got a lot to prove this year too, because if he wants to be number one next year against Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, this is kind of the put up or shut up year for Charles because he's now signed a contract extension for multiple years under Ferrari. He is the golden boy in Maranello, and he really needs to now showcase why he's the golden boy over Sainz in particular too, who has recently won a race, for Ferrari. And I know that Charles had better. Yeah, exactly. The last two, I think he's won. I know Charles has always been strong, but he really needs to showcase why he should be considered for top strategy every weekend.
I have Lewis Hamilton to win more than 5 podiums.
Okay.
This will
will he win a race though, John?
I think there needs to be a couple of things for that to happen other than Singapore. For the most part, the Red Bull has always just been number one. So I think there needs to be some factors of whether if something happens to Max Verstappen or Sergio Perez. I definitely think that it could be possible. I would love to see more teams win on the grid, but I even in my notes here, I think maybe one team will win. I think maybe 2 wins will be from other teams, but I still think Red Bull will win at least 20 of the races this year. Controversial. I think this is Sergio Perez's last year at Red Bull, and I'm predicting that we will lose 2 drivers this year before the season ends.
Ooh, who would those 2 be?
So I think that Daniel Ricciardo might go back up to Red Bull.
Oh, so Sergio would then be out.
Sergio would be out.
Okay.
And, let's just get a little spicy here. I don't think things are going to be well in Alpine this year.
You tell me one of those guys are going to lose it? I love it.
I think that the team for 2 French drivers, a French constructors, we'll get into Drive to Survive later, but I just generally think that there could be some more drama between them, and I think just one of them might just get the axe. We got to spice it up a little bit here, and some bigger predictions. We're gonna hit 1,000 followers before the Canadian Grand Prix, and I'm determined that.
Spicy. I like that. I think we definitely can hit that mark. No, I love these predictions. And you know what, John? Along the same lines, I've made 3 big predictions. I made 3 predictions. 2 predictions and 1 really major wild card this year. My big prediction is that Max Verstappen is going to win his 4th World Drivers' Championship in a row, joining Fangio, Schumacher, Vettel, and Hamilton as the only champions to do so in terms of winning 4 in a row. But I think Max is going to eclipse 600 points this coming season.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah, breaking his record of 575 last year. This guy is going to win every race this season. I don't see how he won't. The car is not built for him, but his skill sets are going to be optimized going to optimize the car's performance. He might win every race by 30 plus seconds by the end of it, because I think Red Bull downplayed it this week, despite the fact that they were just crushing the field. And it's going to be quite a show if you're a Red Bull fan this season. And likewise, I think Alpine are going to finish 7th in the Constructors' Championship behind a certain team that's going to be a dark horse this year, because they have brought a car that is aerodynamically really inefficient, and I think it's going to be basement level in terms of performance at the start of the year. I don't think they're going to be very good with all the infighting that happened last year and all of I think, poor management that goes on at Alpine. I really do not see how they're going to recover from a poor start to the season, and they're going to finish 7th behind the newly minted V-Carb. Yeah, I think Racing Bulls are going to be a dark horse this season. I think they're going to finish quite high in the Constructors' Championship relative to last year. They've kind of adopted the RB19 model. They have more of a relationship now with Red Bull in terms of development, so that can only bode well. And based on that, I think this is going to be Danny Rick's season to rise from the ashes like a phoenix, and he's going to step back onto the podium in 2024.
Do you consider that if he comes back, in sense that a podium, and then my prediction is that he goes to Red Bull at the end of the year? Not only that, I think last year we saw 9 drivers on the podium at some point, or maybe 10. I have to double check that. But like, do you see a Lance Stroll get on the podium for the first time since in a while?
I don't know. This is the problem I have with Lance is that he has great characteristics as a driver, but he just generally cannot put it together on a weekend. And I would love to see Lance back on the podium since 2020. Like it would be awesome if Aston Martin had a double podium finish this year with Alonso. I just don't know how realistic that is compared to it's funny because again, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, last year was 2 steps forward. I think this year might be 1 step backward.
Do you want to kind of go through what we're thinking for your quick top 20, your driver standings and constructors?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll go with the World Constructors Championships first, so that because it's a lot of my drivers championship was based on my driver. So in first place for the constructors, I have Red Bull. They're going to smash the points record. They're going to probably score about 900 points this season, just below everybody out of the water. Bob's your uncle. Have a good time. It's going to be, might as well give them the check, and we're going to play for second place at this point.
Do a barrel roll.
Ferrari is going to finish P2 because I think they've done a really good job in testing. They have 2 hungry drivers, and to me, they are the ones that can compete with Red Bull the best based on what we've seen so far this year. I have McLaren finishing P3 ahead of Mercedes in P4. I think it's time for some new blood with regards to that P3 finish. I think McLaren can be on their way just based on what we've seen last year. I know they might be a little bit behind the 8 ball to begin the year this year. However, I think based on the way that they've been upgraded the car last year under Andrea Stella, I really do believe that they could finish P3 in the Constructors' Championship. And also to support, Erica. Aston Martin are going to be the rest, like the rest of the top 5. They're going to finish P5 in that case, just based on how I think the development went overall this season. If they get an aggressive development package coming in over the course of the season, maybe that might change, but I'm going to be realistic and say P5. I'm going to have V-Carb Racing Bulls at P6. Yes, they're going to be the dark horses of the season this year with Yuki and Danny Rick, because you have 2 very hungry drivers with a third in the reserve team wanting a spot next year in F1, right? And Liam Lawson has proven that if someone does go down, he can jump in and score you points. So I think that's why and they also have a better car than they did, a much better car than they did last year in terms of development. They're on the right way. But I think with the new boss, Laurent Mekies, and CEO Peter Beyer, they are going to push development hard, and I think they're going to be finishing P6. I said, Alpine's P7, Williams is P8. They had a very tough testing going this week. They completed the least amount of laps because they're trying to go for a more balanced approach this year, which I think is a good change in philosophy, and need a change of philosophy to be competitive. But again, I think it's going to be a little bit of a step backwards with that change this year. Finish them at P8. They'll be fast in the straight lines, so they'll be fine in like Monza and like Spa. But really any other circuit, they're going to be tough because I don't think the back end's as stable as they wanted it to be, which is then going to make them be susceptible to very windy conditions. And that quite happens throughout the course of the season. P9, I have Kick Sauer because P10 is Haas. They're going to be so bad this season. I don't even know if they're going to score.
I was going to say 5 points for Haas. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a fair assessment. But with that said, I'm going to go to my Drivers' Championship predictions. So P1, Max Verstappen, obviously, he's going to win his 4th. I have Charles Leclerc in P2 because of what we were talking about earlier in terms of, I think he needs to prove it this year why he's the golden boy. With that said, I think, as you mentioned, Sergio's last year, I have a feeling sort of too that they're going to be pushing him out the door for Danny Rick to come back into the team, and he'll finish P3. And with that P3 performance, that's going to be enough for Helmut to say, you're out, Danny's in sort of idea. I think Lando Norris is going to finish P4. I think he's going to maximize that McLaren car, which he's been able to do in the past, and he's going to utilize experience. I think he's more mature now as a driver, and I think P4 is going to be a really good opportunity for him this season. I have Carlos Sainz in P5, Fernando Alonso in P6, because he's been able to take he was able to take the 5th fastest car last year and finish P4. I don't think it's going to happen again this year based on the development of McLaren and of Ferrari. In that case, they're going to be finishing ahead of Alonso this season. P7, P8, I have the Mercedes team with Russell, or with Hamilton finishing ahead of Russell. It's his last season at Mercedes. He's going to try to make the most of it. So I think that's why he's going to finish ahead of Russell in the standings. P9, we have Oscar Piastri. And then in P10, I have Lance Stroll finishing where he's going about last year. Then going back from there, I say Yuki is going to be P11 with Gasly finishing P12. I think he can optimize the car overall as a driver compared to Esteban. In that case, both scored a podium last year, but I think Gasly has an opportunity to really showcase his medal this year, being in his second year of the team. I got Danny Ricciardo finishing P13 because I think he's going to perform well in that RB, but I think Yuki's going to take that top spot. And I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive with Danny going into the team, but I think that move's honestly been set since Daniel's return last season. I think Max has the best rapport with Daniel. It'll be a fitting end for Daniel's career to finish off at Red Bull. And he was one of Max's good friends on the grid, and he wouldn't really challenge Max, I think, for the number one driver in the team, and he'll do everything that he can for Max to win like a fifth, sixth championship in that case. Go ahead.
I was going to say that's really interesting, and we'll get to the Drive to Survive kind of portrayal of that. But yeah, just keep on going. You're on a marathon. I can't even compete. I can't even keep up.
I got Ocon finishing P14. So if there's one drive that's gonna be out of the season, Richie, it would be. I think honestly, I'm gonna go and say Ocon. I'll continue off the hot take. And the reason why I say this is because he's got that Mercedes connection, so he can't afford to leave midway through. He can. He's got that Mercedes kind of connection that is under partnership. I think he can leave midway through the season. I'm gonna say Valtteri Bottas is gonna finish P15 because he's going to be again, but I think like these bottom 6 are going to be very relatively close in terms of points, maybe like a net difference of 3 points together in that case. So I think just VB is going to, based on experience outcome, make most of that car. I got Alex Albon finishing P16, Guan Yu Zhou finishing P17 with Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg finishing P18 and 19. And unfortunately, our boy Logan Sargent will be finishing at the basement this season in the F1 Drivers' Championship.
There will be a lot of drivers that are going to be in the hot seat for their positions, just be given that there's going to be a lot of open seats by the end of the year. And we're going to see a lot of make or break moments for a lot of these drivers. And like, I can guarantee you, look, like what we saw with Sebastian Vettel, when like one driver announces his retirement, then everything breaks up.
Oh, so Richard, we did also receive some fan predictions.
Oh,
People looked on TikTok and on Instagram. We did post a reel last night about, please commenting your predictions. We did receive some. We got some from Tyler Hatherall, friend of the show.
Ricardo ends the season at Red Bull. Carlos Sainz wins 2 races to Charles Leclerc. Mercedes finishes 4th in the constructors.
Ooh, okay. So we gotta have some same thoughts. In that case, I like it. In a sense, I can definitely see Danny Rick ending the season with Red Bull because based on the De Vries situation last year, that position is always changeable, especially if the silly season hasn't gotten silly yet. Red Bull will do everything in their power to make it silly. Not that it already has been insane.
There you have it. Not only that our fans submitted questions, so thank you, Tyler, for providing your responses. I think let's get into the Drive to Survive segment here. And spoiler alert, we're going to be talking about the Drive to Survive, the latest season that came out on Netflix.
So stop listening if you haven't watched it yet.
I'm going to be honest. I've only seen up to, I think, episode 4. But overall, I think this is like I think what the producers tried to do, they tried to make this more intense.
Yeah, they made it. They found just key storylines in the season, or really hyper focused on like little storylines in the season and blew them. But it was dramatic, but it was also gripping at the same time.
Did you feel like it was back to like the first season all over again?
No, I think they were more truthful in the way they approached this season because the narratives did align with how the overall community was feeling in some sorts. Like for instance, you had the Aston Martin at the beginning of the Aston Martin episode and them wanting to win, bringing in Fernando, and you could tell there was clear frustrations on the side of Aston Martin when Lance got into that accident. Kind of almost feeling like he was careless in nature. in that case. But you could tell it was good because it showcased the frustrations, but then it built up. It built up to his P7 finish in Bahrain last year, right? As kind of the crescendo to the episode. They have painted Lawrence Stroll as just a pantomime Bond villain. Like that.
I was curious how they were going to like describe him, but then they try to make him not only a villain, but also that moment where he heard about like Lance getting into that accident, like try to make him like a fatherly figure. It's like, what was the line he said? He said,
I'm a
uh,
father first, and then like owner second, which is
yeah.
very fair, right? Like Lawrence, like again, Lawrence Stroll is human, right? Of course, he's going to be there for as a dad. But the way they introduced him, though, it was just like the typical, like the prototypical Bond villain, right? Everyone was nervous, like, oh, can't do this, with the party. Make sure Lawrence has this, put this away, and have to have this arranged in a certain way for when Lawrence comes in. It was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good episode. And I didn't expect, I saw when episode 2 came out, The Fall from Grace, just to see kind of like, because the cool thing about this is that they follow the teams for this season. And mind you, I don't know about you, but they felt like they had even more access than before.
I think they did. I think they had some really interesting access, especially with regards to Danny Rick. And I do say Will Buxton was up to his old tricks this year, providing the real hard hit cutting analysis in that case. But what was also really nice to see was Claire Williams come back and
Yes.
provide her reviews and takes on stuff, because
We missed
she
it
is a
so
former
much.
team principal, and she is racing royalty. Her family's racing royalty, right?
Yeah, and it was really nice to see that. And I think especially like give her perspective, and especially for now, she sees the success that Williams is producing, and she's like, she can say like, listen, like we started that, and we're glad to see them that it's not going from another owner to another owner.
It's interesting because based on the information that we know now that has happened in this past month, with certain people losing their spots at teams, with certain people moving on, Netflix has done an incredible job of foreshadowing those events for next season. I am not kidding. It was incredible the way they depicted a couple of people's decisions going forward.
Like it's already been ruined to me, but like, how are they able to get the Lewis Hamilton thing? He's like, you could be there forever, but I'm not.
Yeah. And how in the sense like, oh, I don't know if I should be here next season, blah, blah, blah. And then also with Gunther Steiner and the Haas versus William episode saying, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. Foreshadow, you don't.
Spoiler alert, I don't know if you saw it, but they announced that he's coming back as like a reporter on like a German broadcast for Formula One.
I think that's perfect for Gunther. I think he'll be an amazing analysis guy or color commentator. He'd be great. That's a great transition, I think, for him. It's less stress. He doesn't have to worry about phoning Gene every 5 minutes. Something happens. He can relax and enjoy, do some interviews, be in the paddock, but really be able to enjoy his time there as well.
I also found the episode, which I actually was really shocked. The episode when they really focus on the first half of the season, where you thought Zach Brown was going to get fired, and then the controversial meeting with the
marketing execs at like Android, Google, and OKX. Oh my God. That's the one I would have been. That's the one thing I would have avoided as much as possible, because he got grilled.
I'm shocked they allowed the cameras in that. That is like, can you imagine you got multi-million-dollar contracts here for sponsorship, and you're like, hey, bud, like your team sucks.
Oh, wait, by the way, we're gonna do this interview with Netflix in the background.
Yeah, they're gonna pretend that they're not here.
Yeah, and you could really tell just how much frustration was on Lando Norris's face, like when they went to go play golf. But it was really cool being able to see like the origin stories of a lot of these relationships. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And how interconnected a lot of people are, especially with Toto and Fred. Especially Toto and Lewis, but also Toto and Fred, like cross teams. It was quite interesting. I thought the opening was quite fun, watching them what they do in the off season, seeing that side of them and how bad Max is at paddle. Holy crap! Stick to racing, bud. It's the one thing he's terrible at is paddle. Zach Brown had like, I think one of the funniest comments at the start. He goes like, yeah, I love the end of the season because I don't have to see these dickheads anymore, something like that. I was like, oh, Zach, I love it. See a different side of you.
But I think overall, I think this was a really good season, and I'm kind of really, I think season 4 wasn't a really good season. Last year's season was all right. I think it was good. I found like I was just shocked the amount of more access they got, and I think understandably, a lot of the teams probably just said yes to it because they love the publicity and the exposure that they get with the show, and they know that it's the big reason why viewership has gone up since 2019. Um, and like obviously now you're seeing this with a lot of other stations. So
Yeah, the one thing that I wish they didn't do was give Alpine 2 episodes. It was like a mini train wreck.
oh god, I haven't got to that yet.
Yeah, you'll see.
Thank you for those comments, Andrew. And I think this was a really good episode to talk about all things leading up to Friday. Well, not Friday, but Saturday's race to kick off the 2024 Formula One season. It's been really exciting. We're really excited just to be at Trinity Common on Saturday. Andrew and I are going to be there at 9 a.m. Eastern. So if you want to come early and meet us, again, we got some promotional materials that we're going to be giving out. We got some fun stuff that we want to do with our fans. Make sure to follow us on social media. Make sure to call the bar if you would like to make some reservations. And you can reach them at 647-346-3030. Trinity Common at the heart of Kensington Market. My name is Ricci, and I'm here with Andrew Cleary. And make sure to follow us on social media. But with further ado, I will let Andrew sign us off. And we will see you next week as we talk about the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Yes, as Rishi mentioned, this is season 4, episode 3 of the F1 podcast. Everyone, thank you so much for listening. Again, please follow us on TikTok. Please follow us on Instagram. And please follow us at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube for our content. We will be at Trinity Commons on Saturday for the Bahrain Grand Prix, where we hope to see everybody there and get everybody's initial reactions to the start of the season because, oh, baby, we are back. Take care and see you soon.